Now, Legacy is a format we don't see as much on the Open Series this year. We have more of a focus on standard and modern action, but you and I, we were in Washington, D.C. a little bit ago. We got to see quite a bit of Legacy action. We got to see a lot of Delver, a lot of Miracles, but what looked to be one of the better decks in the room and actually ended up winning the tournament, and I know this is a big deal for you because you love blue cards, you love combo decks, is Omnitel.
Right, so Omnitel is very interesting. We've had Show and Tell as one of the best combo decks in Legacy for quite a while, but it's almost always been Sneak and Show instead of Omnitel. So what really made the difference? Why did people get away from the red cards? And I think a lot of that, well, let's start out with what the deck does. It plays Show and Tell, and it puts Omniscience into play rather than a creature. But I think the strength of this deck is based off the card Dig Through Time, and that's why we're seeing it do just so well this weekend. It can play that counter war, and you know, it plays this long game better than any of the combo decks we've seen for a while. The fact that it can trade off these early spells and then reload, find its 2 or 3 part combo with a Dig Through Time, I think makes it the combo deck to beat this weekend.
Did you expect Dig Through Time to be this good in Legacy?
Well, I mean, I thought that the card draws from Constantar here were going to be really influential. They just fit in very naturally to Legacy play patterns. Delve's very easy to facilitate. Treasure Cruise promotes decks that's all about resource trading. Just trade off, load up, rinse and repeat until your opponent runs out of stuff. Dig Through Time is more of a selection piece. Treasure Cruise is obviously banned, and so Dig Through Time has started promoting these decks that are about selection, that are about finding specific pieces, like Omniscience, like Counterbalance, and it's no surprise those decks have become a lot better since Constantar here has been printed and people have had time to work on these kind of builds.
Chris Van Meter has been screaming from the rooftops about how this is a Dig Through Time deck that happens to play Show and Tell, not vice versa, and given his results with the deck and the results that we see in the Open Series, it's hard to argue, really.
No, the deck's been very strong. I expect it to put up good numbers, and a lot of players I think we will see playing it this weekend. Chris Van Meter, we've already seen players like Logan Mize have been on the deck for quite a long time.
Yep.
I would expect it to be one of the popular decks in the room.
Well, another deck that I know is going to be very popular because we are at Invitational, and it appears that Reed Duke is here, so that's at least one Miracles player. Miracles is a Legacy standby. It's not going anywhere. It is the control deck of the format, and it is very, very good. Keeps getting new additions, too. We talked about Dig Through Time and Omnitel. Dig Through Time is in that deck as well, as is Monastery Mentor, which was an interesting addition. You don't expect to see that card, Patrick, in that deck, but it gives it a real clock, especially with top.
And you can't hold down the ground forever with Miracles. And, it's the type of deck where, you lock out the 1s and 2s, and you have a couple counter spells left over for the big stuff, but you can't necessarily lock the game up in every single matchup for forever. So having a card that allows you to really speed up your clock plays very nicely alongside your lock pieces.
Now, Matthias, as far as this deck, we've seen versions splash red for the blast effects and maybe some wear tears and action like that. With how prevalent we believe Omnitel is going to be, you have to imagine people are going that direction, right?
Yeah, well, I think people might go back that direction. This is going to be a really interesting weekend, actually, for Miracles, because I'm not sure how well it's positioned when you look at what the other players are trying to do. Miracles, I think one of the advantages Miracles has in Legacy is that it plays real board control. It has Terminus, it has sometimes a copy of Supreme Verdict, it plays a full set of Swords to Plowshares. When you look at decks like Omnitel as your combo deck and these mono blue things, and we'll get to what some of the other fair decks are in the format, this is going to be a tough weekend for Miracles players. Now, of course, does that mean Reed Duke won't be able to put up a good result with it? Absolutely not. It's still a powerful deck, but this is going to be an uphill battle, I think, for Miracles.
So we talked about the fair decks of the format. I'll put Delver in there, I guess, in all its different variants. It is the fair deck of the format. It's very, very good, though, as we all know. It's the Legacy standby. Now, for Delver decks, a couple different ways you can go. You can play Teamer Delver, you can play Sultai Delver, Jeskai, and even the new one on the block now because of Delve cards, Grixis Delver.
Yeah, and that's what we saw 2 weekends ago in Washington, D.C. It was actually Grixis Delver is the go-to Delver deck, and a lot of that has to do with where the meta is right now. When players are setting up for big counter wars, especially combo players like an Omnitel player, rather than trying to engage them on a counter war front, one thing you can do is you can really go at them hard with discard. And this package of Young Pyromancer plus Cabal Therapy that we see out of Grixis Delver is really powerful at doing that, and is I think the preferred way to go about it. So I would imagine that Grixis will be the most popular Delver deck this weekend. That said, it certainly isn't the only way to go. Teamer Delver is always strong week in, week out. I expect to see some of that too.
How do we feel about Delver? Which one would you probably play if you played?
I would probably play Grixis this weekend. To me, the big swing card is Abrupt Decay. Very, very powerful against counterbalance strategies, not very good against Omniscience. If you're expecting to play against a lot of counterbalances, a lot of other cards like Muzawa's Jete and Stoneforge Mystic, then I think Sultai or some variation there becomes very attractive. If you're really focusing on being the combo versions of decks, Omniscience especially, I think either Grixis or Teamer is the way to go.
Doesn't sound like anyone's in the Jeskai with Stoneforge Mystic.
I think right now the format's just too fast, too combo-centric. Now, the white cards do give you some good sideboard options. Meddling Mage, Aethersworn Canonist, they're very disruptive for the combo decks, but I think that the Jeskai build is the slowest of the bunch. It's the best against other creatures decks because you have Stoneforge missing, True Name Nemesis, Umezawa Jitte, and Batterskull. But I don't see a big incentive to play those cards right now when you're trying to beat Omniscience.
Now, we know Delver's going to be played. We're going to see it over the course of these rounds. We don't even talk about it that much. Everyone knows that deck. A deck that we don't know very well because we don't see it very often because it's expensive is lands. Now, the people who play lands, they're winning with lands. I think of David Long, I think of Daryl Ayers, and more people are working that way towards building that deck because it's very well positioned against these blue decks. Not great against combo, but pretty good against the other blue decks.
Yeah, if you're playing against decks that are playing to the board, lands is incredible. Your lock pieces, Maze of Ith, Tabernacle, Wasteland, they're very, very potent. If you're trying to beat the deck with counterspells, that's very hard to do because Life from Loam just comes back every single turn, and the resource advantage the deck accrues from that card is unbeatable over a long game. The big question is, can you do enough to help the combo matchups when what you're doing really doesn't matter game one?
Now the addition, Matthias, with Thespian Stage and Dark Depths at least gives you a clock against combo, which I think is very important for this deck because before we were killing people with Barbarian Ring and other nonsense, punishing fire. I mean, you could really grind someone down, but closing the game was really hard. Now, I know you're a big combo player. I can't imagine you have a real fear of lands. Of course, they get some good sideboard options, but you're getting game one just about every time.
Yeah, so what you look for with lands in a combo matchup, game one is going to be pretty non-interactive. I suppose with an early exploration, sometimes they can do things like mana deny you out of the game early on, but they're going to lean heavily on the sideboard cards. So it's interesting to me in lands is to see what sort of board cards they're going to go to. Last weekend, we saw a lot of cards like Choke and Trinisphere, which can, that might be good against Omnitel or against these like two-piece combo decks. If you're looking to beat things like Storm, you're looking for cards like Thorn of Amethyst, Sphere of Resistance. So what'll matter to me is, what sideboard package have the lands players played? I think either way they're going to have an uphill battle against combo, but an uphill battle is different than an unwinnable battle.
This is true. Now we talk about combo because you can do a lot of different comboing in Legacy. Now we talked about Omnitel right at the top. We think that's going to be the most popular combo deck, but we are in the Northeast. Bryant Cook lives up here, so you can expect at least one Storm player, but maybe a few more. Caleb Scherer, some players that do play Storm on the Open Series. Kind of in a general sense, do you feel that Storm is a well-positioned combo deck? Do you think there's a combo deck that's better to be playing, or is it just kind of, we should be doing Omnitel, not this Dark Ritual thing?
Well, Omnitel I think is the most powerful combo deck because of its ability to utilize Dig Through Time. That said, a lot of players, and we've been talking about this, are really targeting decks like Omnitel. The more you see Grixis Delver instead of Temur Delver, the more you start to see, I guess, Trinisphere effects out of the sideboard. I think if you want to have the combo deck without the target on it, I think Storm is going to be the way to go this weekend. Certainly, as far as like how powerful the deck is, I think it's one of the strongest things you can do in the format. It's got a fine matchup against other combo decks. Generally, is good in combo mirrors. And if people aren't packing hate for it, Storm could very well take this tournament.
Now, we label Storm as a combo deck, but there are other combo decks, right? Dredge is a combo deck. Mm-hmm. There are other combo decks. Do you feel one way or the other about Storm or other combo decks for this tournament?
I'm pretty positive on Storm for this tournament. I think in the combo mirror matches, what the games come down to is who's faster and can you beat Force of Will. Those are usually the things that are on the table. Storm is definitely one of the fastest combo decks on the block, and with the amount of discard it has in the deck, can also beat decks that are really only packing Force of Will as a way to play back. So your matchup against decks like Omniscience, even your matchup against decks like Counterbalance, I think is typically solid for Storm, and if metagame's in that direction, could be a very good weekend for Dark Ritual.
Yeah. Even decks, I think, if you want another combo deck that'd be great this weekend, Reanimator, I think is a pretty reasonable dark horse of a combo deck right now.
Sure.
You want something that's great against discard. You want it to be pretty fast in a combo mirror. Reanimator checks both those off really quickly.
Any dark horses for you? Legacy real quick?
I think Infect could actually be a good choice for this weekend. I think you can build the deck to have a good matchup against combo decks because you have counter spells and a fast clock of your own, and your counterbalance matchup is very, very good because Inkmoth Nexus is such a challenging card for that deck to beat. If you wanted to play sort of fairish but have a lot of game in the unfair matchups, I think Infect's a good choice.
My dark horse, it's pretty dark.
All right.
Look, Shaheen somehow got second with Esper Stoneblade. I'm just saying anything's possible based off of what he did in Washington, D.C. We kind of wrote him off the entire time, was kind of making fun of him the entire time during the tournament. He loved that we were making fun of him with his Lingering Souls and his Telling performance. This is why Legacy is great. Really anything can happen. And as we make our way through 8 rounds of competition in Legacy, and our top 8 will be Legacy too, we'll find out what that Legacy deck is that players should have been playing this weekend. But that's going to do it for our Legacy portion of the pregame show. We're going to take a quick break here. When we do come back, we're looking at Standard. So we'll see you guys back here for that in just a bit.